The coffee was bitter that morning. I didn't know it was a taste I'd come to associate with the end of my world. The notification popped up on my screen at 9:14 a.m. A single, silent, digital courier of doom. Balance below minimum threshold. My name is Mark Evans. I'm 44 years old, and up until that moment, I thought I understood the architecture of life. You build it, beam by beam, with trust and time and sacrifice. A good job in IT security. A house in a quiet suburb where the biggest drama is whose trash can lid blew off in the wind. A wife you've loved for 15 years. A son who is the very center of your universe. I thought I knew what a bad day was. A flat tire on the way to an important meeting. A missed promotion that stings your pride. A heated argument with your wife that ends in a night on the couch. I was a fool. Those are just ripples. This was the earthquake. My hand, suddenly clumsy and foreign, moved the mouse. The cursor hovered over the alert. I clicked. The screen seemed to taunt me with its slow-loading icon, each rotation a mockery of my crumbling normalcy. And then it appeared. The college fund. The one I'd started the day we brought Leo home from the hospital. The account I'd nurtured for 6 years, sacrificing little luxuries. Promising my boy that no matter what twists life took, his future was a fortress. It was at zero. A perfect, hollow, devastating zero. Not a few dollars low. Not almost empty. Zero. The digital equivalent of a void. A sound escaped my lips, a choked, guttural thing that didn't sound like it came from me. My heart wasn't beating. It was hammering against my ribs. A frantic prisoner trying to escape a collapsing cage. My fingers, cold and slick with a sudden sweat, fumbled across the keyboard, pulling up the transaction history. I needed proof this was an error, a glitch, a nightmare from which I would soon wake. But the truth was there, spelled out in a series of brutal, clinical entries that chronicled the death of my trust. Flights to Cancun, first class. 5-star resort bookings for 2. Charges from luxury boutiques and designer stores whose names I could barely pronounce. And then, a name. A name that echoed in the newly hollow space where my heart used to be. Silas Thorne. A name Vanessa had never, ever mentioned in all our years together. Vanessa was gone. And she hadn't just left me. She had systematically pillaged our son's future, using it as her ticket to a new life with a stranger. The room tilted. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the faint sound of Leo's pencil scratching against his homework in the next room. It all became a distorted, unbearable symphony of a life I no longer recognized. If you've ever felt a trust so broken it becomes a physical ache, a sickness that hollows you out from the inside, then you know the ground I was standing on. You're not alone. Let me know in the comments. And subscribe. This is only the beginning of the storm. Silence has a weight, a texture. For the 3 days that followed my discovery, our house was suffocated by it. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was an oppressive, heavy blanket that smothered sound and hope in equal measure. Every room had become a museum dedicated to a ghost. Her favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that said, "World's Best Mom," sat clean and unused in the cupboard, a relic of a lie. I'd walk down the hallway and catch the faintest whisper of her jasmine perfume, a phantom scent that would trigger a memory so vivid it was a physical blow. Her laughing in the kitchen, her dancing with Leo in the living room, her warm presence in our bed. She was a phantom limb, and I kept reaching for her, forgetting she was already gone. Leo. My sweet, quiet, observant Leo. He was only 10. He didn't understand the full financial gravity of the situation, but he felt the seismic shift in our home's emotional tectonic plates. "Dad," he'd ask, his voice small and tentative in the vast, quiet kitchen. "Where's Mom? When is she coming back from her trip?" I'd force my face into a smile, the muscles aching with the effort, feeling like cracked plaster over a crumbling wall. "Soon, buddy. She just Needed some time. It was a flimsy, transparent lie. And the way he looked at me, with those deep, knowing, old soul eyes, told me he didn't believe it for a second. He saw the shadows under my eyes, the tremor in my hands, the way I jumped when the phone rang. I became a digital ghost, haunting the ruins of our shared life. I spent those days and long, sleepless nights, hunched over my laptop at the kitchen table. The blue glow, my only companion. I was a detective, conducting a gruesome autopsy on my own marriage, piecing together the timeline of my own betrayal. And what I found was worse than a crime of passion. It was a crime of cold, calculated patience. It hadn't been a single, frantic theft. That would have almost been easier to understand, a moment of madness. This was a slow-motion heist, executed with the precision of a master thief. It started small, so innocuous I'd never have noticed. $200 here, labeled shopping. $500 there, spa day. Withdrawals camouflaged amidst the normal noise of our spending. Then, the amounts grew bolder, more audacious. $5,000, $10,000, siphoned off with the steady, ruthless efficiency of a parasite. Each withdrawal, a tiny betrayal that went unnoticed, until the final, massive, devastating withdrawal that left the college fund barren, empty wasteland. She had been bleeding us dry for months, and I, the trusting husband, had been completely oblivious. And then I found the email. It arrived in my promotions folder, almost hidden. The sender: First Metro Title Company. The subject line: Joint property transfer. Pending your approval. My blood didn't run cold. It froze solid in my veins. She hadn't just emptied the accounts. She was trying to steal the house, our home. The place where we'd painted the nursery a soft yellow, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, where Leo had taken his first wobbly steps on the worn living room rug. She was systematically, deliberately, erasing me, trying to wipe my existence from our shared life as cleanly and heartlessly as she'd wiped out that bank account. A cold, focused fury began to burn through the numbing grief. This wasn't just betrayal. This was annihilation. This was war. I started downloading every bank statement, screenshotting every suspicious transaction, every flight receipt, every hotel booking. I compiled folders, cross-referenced dates, built a fortress of incontrovertible evidence. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. Confront her? Go to the police? But I knew I had to be ready. I had to be an impenetrable wall for Leo. I had to be the foundation he could still stand on, even if mine had turned to quicksand. It was on the third night, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of numbers and rage, that I went downstairs for a glass of water, hoping to quiet the noise in my head. That's when I saw it. A faint, bluish, pulsating glow coming from under the garage door. A light we never left on. My first, sleep-deprived thought was that we'd left a power tool charging. I pushed the door open, expecting to flip the switch off. What I found was something else entirely. The garage had been transformed. It was no longer the cluttered, benign space for dusty Christmas decorations, half-finished DIY projects, and Leo's old bicycles. It had been commandeered. Whiteboards, 3 of them, lined the walls, covered in neat, precise handwriting that was unmistakably my son's. But there was no schoolwork. This was a labyrinth, a chaotic yet organized web of flowcharts, complex algorithms, and technical terms I only vaguely recognized from my own work in IT. SSL handshake vulnerabilities, packet-sniffing protocols, encryption bypass techniques, wires, circuit boards, and disassembled electronic components were spread across his old wooden workbench like a technological autopsy. In the center of it all stood Leo, his back to me, small and intensely focused, under the stark light of a single hanging bulb. He was carefully connecting a cluster of colorful wires to what looked like the gutted interior of a smartphone. "Leo?" I said, my voice raspy from disuse and shock. He turned, his face eerily calm. No surprise, no guilt, no sense of being caught doing something he shouldn't. Just that quiet, unnerving focus I was beginning to associate with a side of him I'd never truly seen. "Hey, Dad. What is all this?" I gestured weakly at the whiteboards, my mind struggling to categorize what I was seeing. He shrugged. A small, deliberate motion. "Just a project." "A project for what?" I pressed, my confusion curdling into a low-grade anxiety. He looked me right in the eye, and his voice was steady, devoid of a 10-year-old's hesitation. "She used a man-in-the-middle attack, Dad. It's a common tactic. He probably set up a fake Wi-Fi network or compromised her phone. It's how he tricked her into giving up the login details. But don't worry." He turned back to his workbench, picking up a soldering iron. "I know how to trace it back to the source." I stood there, frozen in the doorway, the cold from the concrete floor seeping through my socks and into my bones. "A man in the what attack? Trace what back?" The words were English, but they felt like a foreign language, a cryptic code coming from my fourth grader. The certainty in his voice, the absolute, unshakable calm, didn't comfort me. It sent a shiver of pure, primal fear straight down my spine. My son was no longer just my son. He was a strategist, and he was preparing for a war I didn't yet understand. When you realize the person you trust with your life was secretly planning its destruction, a part of you shatters. If you've ever had to pick up those pieces while trying to be strong for someone else, you know this unique pain. Don't carry that weight alone. Share your strength in the comments. The questions started the next morning, dropped into our new, strained routine like carefully placed depth charges. Over a bowl of soggy cereal, Leo looked up at me, his expression a masterful mask of childish innocence. But his eyes were like ancient, deep lakes, hiding untold mysteries. "Dad," he began, a drop of milk tracing a path down his chin. "Hypothetically, if you had a master key for a bank's main security system, where would you hide the encryption key? In the cloud? Or on a physical server?" I choked on my coffee, the bitter liquid burning my throat. "What? Leo, where do you hear these things? That's not a hypothetical for a 10-year-old. He simply shrugged, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "Just curious. You work with computers and security. I'm learning for my science fair project." Later, in the car on the way to school, the quiet was broken again by his small, probing voice from the back seat. "Dad, do banks keep a real-time, immutable log of every single person who accesses an account, even if they're using a VPN from another country? Like, can the bank system actually tell the difference between a real user and a ghost?" Each question was a precise, surgical strike. They weren't the random, whimsical curiosities of a child. They were the probing, intelligent queries of a field general planning a complicated campaign, gathering intelligence on the enemy's fortifications. My initial unease began to crystallize into a low, constant hum of anxiety. I'd always known Leo was bright, exceptionally so. He'd been building complex Lego Mindstorms robots since he was 6, programming them to perform tasks that left me baffled. His teachers had used words like profound and unique and gifted to describe his grasp of mathematics and logic. But this was different. This wasn't theoretical. This was applied. This was dangerous. I started paying closer, more clandestine attention to his time in the garage. The whiteboards were living entities, evolving daily. The flowcharts became more intricate, more menacing. I saw boxes labeled Silas Thorne, digital footprint, connected by sharp, black arrows to offshore account pathways and shell company network. He'd mutter to himself as he worked, words like firewall penetration and SQL injection and zero-day exploit, floating out into the hallway like ominous incantations. He wasn't just playing with circuits. He was building a weapon. One evening, the fear and curiosity became too much. I stood in the doorway and just watched him. He was hunched over his laptop, his small fingers a blur on the keyboard, lines of glowing green code scrolling down the screen and reflecting in his glasses, making him look less like my little boy and more like a master tactician commanding a digital army. "Leo," I said, my voice tight with a mixture of fear and paternal authority, "you have to tell me what you're doing. Right now. This isn't a game. These people, this Silas, he's a criminal. He's not someone you mess with from your garage. This is real life." He stopped typing. The sudden silence was louder than the clatter of keys. He slowly turned to look at me, the glow from the screen casting his face in sharp, dramatic shadows. "I'm not messing with him, Dad," he said, his voice quiet but firm, resonating with a confidence that belied his age. "I'm debugging him. He's a virus in our system, a particularly nasty piece of malware, and I'm writing about the antivirus." Before I could formulate a response, my mind reeling from his analogy, he turned his laptop screen toward me. It displayed a complex, multi-tabbed spreadsheet filled with names, dates, bank routing numbers, and transaction IDs. My eyes, trained from weeks of my own forensic accounting, scanned the data, and my heart stuttered to a halt. I recognized our joint account numbers. I saw Vanessa's secret, secondary accounts, the ones I'd only just discovered, and at the bottom of one column, a figure was highlighted in green. $62,418, Leo stated, his tone as calm as if he were reading out the weather. "I initiated the transfer last night. It cleared this morning. I pulled it from Mom's hidden accounts, the ones she was using to slowly move the money. Before she could consolidate it and move it again, it's already back in your new, secured savings account, the one she doesn't know about." I stared, dumbfounded. The room seemed to swim around me. My knees felt weak, and I had to grab the edge of the workbench to steady myself. How did you, Leo? This is hacking. This is illegal. It's repatriation of stolen assets," he corrected me, his tone chillingly matter of fact. She didn't bother changing her old passwords. She was lazy. She used Leo's birthday for everything. He gave a small, sad smile that was far too old for his face, and that shattered what was left of my heart. It was emotionally poignant and computationally easy to guess. He clicked a key, and the screen changed. Now it showed a digital dossier more comprehensive than anything I could have compiled. There were photos of Silas Thorne, aliases, social security numbers, a complex web of interconnected shell companies that looked like a spider's web. "But this," Leo continued, pointing at the screen, "this is the real payload. Silas Thorne is a ghost. He's a professional con man. He's been running sophisticated investment and romance scams for the better part of a decade. This is his entire digital life, his entire operation, every fake identity, every offshore account in the Caymans and Switzerland, every single penny he's ever stolen from people like Mom. It's all right here." I slumped onto a stool, the weight of what I was seeing pressing down on me, crushing me. My 10-year-old son had not only socially engineered his way into his mother's accounts and stolen back a small fortune, but he had also, in his spare time, compiled what amounted to a ready-to-file federal RICO case against a career criminal. The pride I felt was immediately swamped by a tidal wave of terror. What had I unleashed? Just then, my phone, sitting on the workbench beside a tangle of Ethernet cables, vibrated and lit up. The caller ID displayed a number I knew by heart, a number that now inspired a visceral cocktail of rage and pain. It was Vanessa. Leo's eyes met mine, and in their depths, I saw a flicker of something. Pain. Resolve. A final closing of a door. "Answer it," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Put it on speaker. When the person who shattered your world comes crawling back, what do you owe them? Honor? Pity? Revenge? It's a choice that can haunt you forever. What would you do? Share your thoughts below. I swiped to answer with a trembling finger and tapped the speakerphone button. The sound that erupted from the device was not the voice of the confident, secretive woman I'd been married to. It was the raw, ragged sound of a soul coming undone. Vanessa's sobs filled the garage, harsh and uncontrolled. Mark? Mark, thank God. You have to help me. Something's terribly wrong. All my accounts are frozen. Everything's locked. I can't access a single dollar. Silas. He's gone. He just vanished, cleaned out his own accounts, and disappeared. I'm stuck here, Mark. I have no money. No way home. Her voice was stripped of all its former coolness, its practiced composure. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated panic, the sound of a gambler who has bet everything on a single hand and watched the house win. I looked at Leo. His face was a stoic mask, but I saw the subtle tightening of the muscle along his jawline. This was his mother, the woman who had sung him lullabies. Despite the torrent of my own anger, that biological truth still held a terrible, painful power. You need help, I repeated slowly, my voice flat, a barren plain devoid of the sympathy she was so desperately begging for. Mark, please, you have to listen. I made a mistake. A huge, catastrophic mistake, Silas said. He said he loved me, that we'd be safe, that we'd be taken care of for the rest of our lives. He tricked me. He played me. He tricked you? I couldn't keep the scalding bitterness from overflowing. He tricked you into slowly, deliberately draining our son's college fund over the course of 6 months? He tricked you into looking me in the eye every single night, laughing at my jokes, talking about Leo's future, all while you were secretly planning your escape? He tricked you into trying to steal our house out from under me? That's quite the trick. Vanessa, there was a shaky, wet breath on the other end, the sound of someone drowning on dry land. I know how it looks. I'm so sorry. Just a little money. Enough for a plane ticket. Just until I can figure this out. Find a lawyer. I can fix this, I swear. You figured everything out just fine when you were the one doing the stealing, I said. My grip on the phone so tight I could feel the plastic casing groan in protest. You were so clever, so meticulous. Figure this out on your own. Mark, please don't do this to me. I'm your wife. You were my wife. I roared, the sound exploding in the quiet garage, startling even myself. You stopped being my wife the first time you typed in that password and sent our son's future to that monster. It was then that Leo stepped forward. He moved with a quiet purpose that silenced me. He leaned close to the phone on the workbench, his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of absolute zero that I had never heard before. A cold that could freeze fire. Mom, he said. The line went silent, except for a sharp, hitched intake of breath. Leo? Baby? Is that you? Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. I love you. You have to believe me. You know that, right? Her voice was a desperate, pleading whisper. You stole my future, Mom, Leo said, his words not loud, but clear and precise. Each one a shard of ice. You lied to Dad. Every single day. You chose Silas over us. You broke our family. Leo, it wasn't like that. I was confused. I was going to make things right. I promise. Make things right? Leo's voice remained eerily, terrifyingly level. How? By leaving us with nothing? By trying to steal our house, too? Was that part of making things right? Leo, please, she begged, her voice cracking and breaking like thin ice. He tricked me. He brainwashed me. Leo's eyes narrowed. He leaned even closer, his lips almost touching the speaker grill, his words a final, chilling verdict. Don't worry, Mom, he said. his voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow more powerful than a scream. Silas won't be around to trick anyone anymore. The silence on the other end was absolute, profound. It was the sound of the void. Then, a new, terrified whisper, filled with dawning horror. "Leo, what did you do? What did you do?" Leo didn't answer. He didn't justify. He didn't explain. He simply reached out his small, steady hand and pressed the button to end the call. The garage was plunged into a silence more profound and heavy than any I had ever experienced. The only sound was the frantic beating of my own heart, a wild drum against my ribs. I stared at my son, my brilliant, terrifying, avenging angel of a son. "Leo," I said, my voice hoarse, stripped raw. "What did you mean? He won't be around anymore. What does that mean?" He looked up at me, his expression unchanged, a portrait of unsettling calm. "I told you, Dad. I'm fixing it. I'm debugging the system." Later that night, after a dinner eaten in near total silence, he showed me. On his laptop screen was a secure file transfer log, a list of encrypted transactions with official-looking government domain names. He had sent the entire, meticulously compiled dossier on Silas Thorne. The scams, the fake identities, the offshore accounts, the entire digital paper trail, directly to the FBI's Cybercrimes Division and a specialized unit within our state's Attorney General's office. I reported him, Dad, anonymously, through 7 different proxy servers. And Mom, too. He pointed to a specific line in the dossier where Vanessa's name was listed as a co-signer and beneficiary on 3 of Silas's primary shell company accounts. She's not an innocent victim. The money trail doesn't lie. She was an active participant. She'll have to answer for it. The thought of Vanessa, the mother of my child, in a courtroom, in handcuffs, facing federal charges, sent a conflicting, nauseating wave of emotions through me. It was the justice I had craved in my darkest moments, the retribution I had fantasized about. But seeing it delivered, coldly and efficiently, by my child's hand, it felt unclean. It was right, but it felt so terribly wrong. This was the burden I was supposed to carry, not him. And then, as if summoned by the dark turn of our thoughts, my phone rang again. This time, it was a blocked number. A sense of dread, cold and immediate, washed over me. I answered, my voice a low, warning growl. "What?" A harsh, mocking laugh came from the other end. It was a voice I'd only heard in my imagination until now. Slick, arrogant, and now, laced with a venomous rage. It was Silas. "You think you're clever, Evans? You think you can hide behind your little brat and his computer games? I know what he did. You think I won't find you? I know where you live. I know what street you live on. I know the color of your fucking house." A chill, colder than the deepest winter, seized my spine. This was no longer a financial crime. This was a direct, personal threat. "Leave us alone, Silas. A chance? You listen to me. You're going to fix this. You're going to get me my money back, every last cent, or I'll make you wish you had. I will burn your whole world down." The threat hung in the air, ugly, palpable, and real. "Give me the phone, Dad." Leo was there, his face unnervingly calm, a stark contrast to the frantic fear coursing through me. I shook my head, a primal, protective fear surging through my veins. "No, Leo. Absolutely not. Dad." His voice was quiet, but it held a note of absolute, final authority. Now, reluctantly, my hand trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I put it back on speaker. Leo stepped forward, his small frame seeming to grow taller, to fill the space. He was no longer just a boy, he was a force. "Silas," he said, his voice steady as forged steel. There was a pause on the other end. "Who's this? The little punk prodigy?" "You're sloppy," Leo continued, utterly ignoring the taunt. "You're emotionally driven and impatient. You left a digital trail a mile wide. By now, Your identities are flagged by every major financial institution, Interpol, and at least 3 federal agencies. Your assets are frozen. Your aliases are blown. Go ahead. Try something. Make a move. You won't make it 2 miles from wherever you're hiding before someone picks you up. You little shit, Silas snarled, his composure shattering into 1,000 pieces of pure rage. I'm going to find you. I'm going to ruin you. You have no idea who you're messing with. Leo leaned in, his voice dropping to that chilling, quiet, final tone. Let him try, Dad, he said, his eyes locked on mine, boring into my soul. I have one more move if he does. The line went dead as Silas, undoubtedly in a blind fury, hung up. His threat still hung in the air, a toxic cloud, but Leo's words had contained it. They had built a digital cage around it. For now, watching your child walk into a battle you started, seeing a coldness in their eyes that should never be there, is a special kind of hell no parent should ever know. If you're fighting a battle to protect your family, you know the cost. Subscribe for strength. We have to stick together. The next 48 hours were a slow burn nightmare, a psychological siege. I was a raw, exposed nerve, jumping at every creak of the house, my head snapping towards the window every time a car's headlights swept too slowly past our driveway. I double-checked the deadbolts a dozen times a night, my heart thudding a frantic, irregular rhythm against my ribs. I was a man trapped in his own home, a fortress that suddenly felt as flimsy as paper, fueled by a corrosive cocktail of fear and a desperate, clawing need to protect my son. Leo, in stark, almost unnerving contrast, was the picture of preternatural calm. It was as if Silas's threat had been the final, missing variable in a complex equation, and now that it was plugged in, he was simply executing the solution with machine-like precision. He spent most of his time in the garage, fine-tuning his one more move, a plan he refused to fully divulge, telling me only that I needed to trust the process. The night it happened, I was pacing a trench into the living room carpet. Leo was sitting cross-legged on the couch, reading a thick, dense textbook on advanced cryptographic protocols as if it were a Harry Potter novel. He looked up at me, his gaze clear and focused. "He'll come tonight, Dad," he stated, not as a fear, but as a forecast. Between 9:07 and 9:23 p.m. He's impulsive, and his ego is bruised. The digital threat didn't work, so he'll escalate to a physical one. It's the only play he has left. It's in his pattern. His past arrests for assault and battery confirm it. He doesn't think strategically. He reacts emotionally. "How can you be so sure?" I asked, my voice strained, the fear of a live wire in my chest. "Behavioral analysis is just another data set," he replied simply, turning a page. "Predictable inputs lead to predictable outputs." And at 9:18 p.m., the knock came. It wasn't a knock. It was a violent, impatient pounding, a series of jarring impacts that shook the front door in its frame and echoed through the silent house like gunshots. My heart leaped into my throat, choking me. Leo closed his book with a definitive snap, set it down neatly on the coffee table, and looked at me. His expression was serene. "Remember the plan, Dad. Don't engage. Just open the door and step back. Let him talk. Let him incriminate himself." I moved to the door, my legs feeling like they were made of wood and lead. I took a deep, shuddering breath, my hand hovering over the deadbolt. I turned the lock and pulled the door open. Silas Thorne filled the doorway. He was bigger, more imposing than I had imagined from his photos, his face a grotesque mask of pure, undiluted rage. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, darting around manically. He reeked of stale whiskey and cheap cologne, the scent of desperation. "You think you can ruin me?" he spat, shoving his way past me into the entryway with such force I stumbled back. He was inside. The wolf was in the den. "Where is he? Where's that little freak? I know he's in here." "What?" The voice came from behind me. Leo stood at the entrance to the living room, his hands tucked into the pockets of his gray hoodie. He looked impossibly small and fragile standing there. Yet he held himself with an absolute, unnerving stillness. He was a rock in the center of a hurricane. "You want to threaten us, Silas," Leo said, his tone almost conversational. A scientist addressing a volatile but predictable specimen. "Go ahead, say it again. For the record, I want to make sure the audio is clear." Silas's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching violently in his cheek. He took a menacing step forward, his large hands curling into meaty fists at his sides. "You're going to regret this, you little shit. I swear. I'll make you both pay. I'll make you watch. I'll burn this house to the ground with you in it. You hear me? I'll burn it all." Leo didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He didn't even breathe differently. He slowly, deliberately, pulled a small, black, rectangular object from his hoodie pocket. It looked like a high-tech key fob or a portable hard drive, with a single, bright, blinking blue LED light on one end. He set it carefully, almost reverently, on the small hallway table next to a framed photo of our family from a happier time. "Too late," Leo said, his voice flat and final. "You already did." Silas's eyes, wide with fury, flicked down to the device. "What the hell is that? Another one of your toys?" Leo tilted his head slightly, a gesture that was almost, but not quite, one of academic curiosity. "That's a live, encrypted, wide-spectrum audio stream. The FBI's Cybercrimes Unit and Local Tactical Command have been listening to everything you've said since you crossed the property line. Every threat, every word, is being recorded, time-stamped, geotagged, and streamed in real time to their servers. The battery life is 72 hours. The range is 2 miles. So, please," he said, his voice dripping with a cold, controlled challenge. "Keep talking. Give them more evidence." The transformation on Silas's face was instantaneous and terrifying to behold. The blind rage melted away, replaced by a dawning, slack-jawed, terrified comprehension. His bravado, his bluster, his entire threatening persona crumbled into dust right before our eyes. He looked from the blinking device to Leo's impassive face, to my own stunned expression, and back to the device. The distant sound of sirens, faint at first like a memory of sound, then growing rapidly, urgently louder, pierced the stillness of the night, cutting through his panic. "You set me up," he hissed, his voice now a mixture of sheer terror and bewildered disbelief. You set me up." "I told you, Silas," Leo said, his expression unchanged, a monument of calm. "One more move." The sirens stopped abruptly outside our house, the sudden silence somehow more deafening than the noise. The living room was instantly, violently, filled with the frantic, strobing red and blue lights from multiple police cars, painting our walls in alternating shades of emergency. The front door, which I had closed, was suddenly thrown open with such force it slammed against the wall. Officers in tactical vests, their faces set in grim determination, poured into our home, weapons drawn. Silas Thorne, one of them, a sergeant, barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Down on the ground. Now. You're under arrest for multiple federal counts of wire fraud, extortion, and interstate threats. Get on the ground." Silas, his face a pale mask of defeat, reluctantly raised his hands. As they forced him to his knees on our entryway floor and slapped cold, steel handcuffs on his wrists, he twisted his head, his glare fixing on Leo with a hatred so pure and venomous it seemed to poison the air between them. "This isn't over, kid," he snarled, his voice a guttural promise. "This isn't over." Leo didn't flinch. He didn't react. He simply watched, his gaze cool and analytical, like a biologist observing the conclusion of a predetermined experiment, as the officers dragged a shouting, struggling Silas out of our house and into the back of a waiting squad car. The door slammed shut with a definitive, heavy thud, finally muffling his impotent screams. "I told you, Dad," Leo said calmly, his eyes still locked on the closed front door. One more move. Peace, I have since learned, is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of a quiet, so deep, so profound, that you can hear the gears turning in your son's mind from 2 rooms away. It is the sound of a battle ended, but also the sound of a boy who has aged a lifetime in a few short weeks. The days that followed were still. The storm had passed. Silas was in federal custody, his House of Cards empire collapsing in on itself as investigators followed the digital breadcrumb trail Leo had laid out for them. Our lawyers confirmed that our finances were secured, the house title was locked, and the legal machinery was turning in our favor. Vanessa was facing a long, complicated legal battle of her own, a litany of financial fraud charges that would likely end in prison time. She called one last time, her voice a hollow, broken echo of the woman I had once vowed to spend my life with. Mark, please, I'm begging you. For Leo. Don't keep him from me. I'm still his mother. I stared out the kitchen window, at the perfectly manicured lawn of a neighbor, at a world that had continued to spin on its axis, oblivious to the personal apocalypse that had occurred in our home. Leo doesn't need you anymore, Vanessa, I said, my voice cold, flat, and final. It wasn't said with anger, but with a simple, tragic statement of fact. You made sure of that when you chose a con man over your own son. You sacrificed that right. I ended the call. There was nothing left to say. The chapter was closed. But life inside our house had fundamentally, irrevocably shifted. The immediate, tangible danger was gone. But a new, more subtle, and perhaps more permanent tension had taken its place. Leo spent nearly all his waking hours back in the garage. It was no longer a command center for a specific, time-sensitive mission. It had become his laboratory, his sanctuary, his natural habitat. He was constantly building, coding, sketching intricate blueprints for autonomous drones and homebrewed security systems with a focus and intensity that bordered on obsession. The crisis was over, but the programmer was still writing code. One evening, I stood in the doorway, just watching him. The soft, persistent hum of his soldering iron and the faint, sharp scent of heated metal and rosin core solder filled the air. His face was bathed in the cool, white light of his angled work lamp, his brow furrowed in deep concentration as he connected hair-thin wires inside a new, more advanced version of his tracking device. You don't have to spend all your time here, buddy, I said, my voice gentle, cutting through the focused silence. You're just a kid. You should be outside, riding your bike. You should be at the park, with friends. He glanced at me briefly, a flicker of acknowledgement, then turned back to his work, his hands never stilling. I don't mind, Dad. Really. This is what I like doing. This is what I'm good at. I hesitated. The question that had been burning a hole in my soul for weeks, finally finding the courage to escape. Why, Leo? Why keep pushing yourself like this? Even now? It's over. We're safe. You saved us. He stopped. He set down the soldering iron with a deliberate, careful precision and looked at me. His eyes, in the bright work light, were impossibly clear and deep. His voice was calm. Matter of fact. Because if something's broken, I have to fix it, he said, as if explaining that the sky is blue or that 2 + 2 = 4. That's just how my brain is wired. If I can see a problem, a vulnerability, a flaw in the system, and I have the ability to solve it, to patch it, to build a better defense, then I should. It's my responsibility. I studied him, the weight of those words settling heavily on my soul, a burden I feared he would carry for the rest of his life. He spoke with the conviction of a seasoned engineer, a field surgeon, a philosopher king, someone 3 times his age. It left me torn in two, ripped between an immense, bursting, awe-filled pride and a deep, unshakable, chilling worry. that felt like a permanent stone in the pit of my stomach. No 10-year-old should have to think in terms of vulnerabilities and attack vectors. No child should have to look at the world as a system to be debugged. No boy should have to become a human shield, a cold, calculating strategist for his own father. He picked up his finished device. It was a small, sleek, black quadcopter drone, its surfaces clean and professional. With a final, fluid tap on his laptop keyboard, its 4 tiny rotors whirred to life with a high-pitched, efficient hum. It lifted off the workbench with a graceful, engineered precision, hovering perfectly, motionless, in the center of the room. It was steady, controlled, unnervingly perfect, just like the boy who had built it. She tried to destroy us, I thought, watching the drone hold its perfect, silent position in the air, a testament to my son's incredible mind. But in losing her, I was given a terrifying, awe-inspiring gift. I saw the son she had completely and utterly underestimated. The quiet, unassuming boy who, when pushed into a corner, revealed himself to be a warrior, a genius, our protector, brilliant, unshakable, and maybe, just maybe, too cold and too hardened for his own good. Leo didn't notice the tears welling in my eyes, too focused on the delicate, real-time telemetry data streaming across his laptop screen. I sat back on my stool, saying nothing, letting the quiet, persistent hum of the drone fill the garage. It was a sound that carried both a profound hope for our future safety and a deep, lingering, paternal fear for the future of the brilliant, complicated, and forever changed boy I was so lucky to call my son. This journey from betrayal to a fragile victory changed us forever. It taught me that strength isn't about how loud you can shout, but how silently you can endure, how strategically you can think, and how fiercely you can love. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to find a strength you didn't know you had to protect your family, then you understand. You are not alone. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Our family story is over, but the lesson remains. Sometimes, the quietest ones in the room, the ones everyone overlooks, are the strongest forces you will ever encounter. Thank you for being our witness.